Are you ready to break free from hesitation, self-doubt, and isolation? Do you want to lead with confidence, build powerful connections, and live boldly? I'm Corey Baum, and I'm here to share the most impactful strategies and mindsets that I've learned through coaching, leadership, and real-world experience. Together, we'll forge unshakable confidence, master social dynamics, and create a life rooted in purpose, brotherhood, and bold action. Inside, you'll get the tools and insights to become the strongest, most connected version of yourself. Let's dive in. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Evolve Men podcast. I've got with me today Stefanos Koutsoupis, and he is a fellow men's coach that I've got on the show. I'm really excited to talk to him. So, Stefanos, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey along the way, as to what brought you here?
Yeah. Thanks you for having me here, and it's very nice to meet other coaches working with men, because I think it's a really underrepresented world out there for men in mental health and coaching and therapy and psychotherapy. So about my journey, I initially, studying. I was a physicist. I did the PhD. I worked a couple of years in research before pivoting at some point to business and to IT and to project management. So I've been doing very well in my professional life in research. I was doing very well in my professional life later on in business, and still there was something that was bugging me, and I was doing a zillion hobbies. I was trying a lot of different things. I was meeting a lot of people, and still this feeling of something was disturbing me, something was not right, and I couldn't tell what. So more or less things started when I tried to look for that answer, and I did this through initially a self-development group I found in my town, and later through therapy. That and those two things are that helped me really come in terms that okay, I'm a human being. I do have some emotional needs which are not met, and I don't have yet the tools to handle them. And I worked a lot with cognitive therapy, and I learned, to understand the patterns of mind and what make me tick. So this is one part. And then in the meantime, I learned about mindfulness, and I practiced a lot, and it worked in parallel with therapy, and it made wonders. It's something I still do practice today, every day. And at some point I found out also about coaching, and coaching came to me as an answer to, I'm having this conversation with Corey, and I know I'm right. Why can't I make him see my point? And coaching replied, gave me this answer that, you can't make someone else believe anything. The solution comes and the answers come from within. So this is the speed dating version of what brought me here today.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, where I know that you host men's groups where you're at, right? Not only men's groups, but as well as coaching. Tell me a little bit about those men's groups and kind of what your experience have been about the men that are showing up and some of the struggles that they're dealing with as they're there.
I'm always amazed by the people coming in, about how open they are to collaborating and sharing with other men, even from the first time. As soon as you set some ground rules about confidentiality and about not telling other people what to do, they are ready to share, and there are very heavy subjects coming up. There are men who are divorced and they don't have a place to stay, or there are men that their work and their work has taken such a big toll on their lives that they ended up sick, overweight, not being able to move. So those are some of the toughest situations. But more or less, what I see in men is that they really, really And this is true. It was true for me, and it still is to some extent. It's super, super hard to understand what is bothering them, what brought them here today. I mean, people are coming in the room and they're not sure what is happening. And, this is not our strong point, understanding our feelings, our emotions, what make us tick. So, without doing this, it's super hard to actually find a solution to your problems because you are not problem aware at all. Something's bugging you, but you don't know what it is. Maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your job, maybe you are unlucky, and something is wrong always, on the external factors, and we're trying to change that. So this is why men are coming. They are trying to change their external factors with no success for so long that they start seeking for help.
Yeah, definitely. I resonate with that. So it sounds like for you that a lot of these guys maybe, and I think it's the case with a lot of men, is that they're so in their head or they're used to approaching things from this logical sort of standpoint, right? That
Mhm.
they can only go in circles so many times before they're like, man, this isn't working for me. I keep doing the same thing
Mm.
and keep getting the same results. And there might actually be something to exploring how it is that I feel about it or these other sort of things. How is that how has that journey been for you and the group? I imagine that there is probably a certain part of the population that shows up that is, I don't want to say like hesitant or resistant or anything like that, but it's just new to them. They don't know anything about it. How has that journey been for you and the men along that path?
I never expected what will happen, that people will be coming and be ready to participate. Uh, and, starting in the first meetings, I was very held back because I didn't know how far I can go or how far I can ask. And what I found out is that, men are carrying a lot of courage with them to share and be open. And they're always happy, and they are looking forward sharing their knowledge and their life lessons with other people. So most men are coming, they have burned in their lives one or twice, and they are saying, okay, I'm here, I've learned something, I want to teach other people about this. So this sharing mindset is something I love. uh, I see that the men who are coming, they don't care that much about what I do in terms of work, of coaching, of self development. Maybe they have seen some of these things, they don't care, they don't believe them, but they do care a lot about the community, and they do strongly believe in having other people in your environment that can support you in your journey. So this is something big, and this is something, we have to tap more into it, because men are looking for friends, men are looking for mentors, for support, and they can't find it actually. They just bumped into my group, for example. They didn't know I existed. Nothing similar is in this country, at least. I'm based in Greece, and they bump into it, and they like it, and they like what they see, and it's something new to them. So yes, tapping into this community, it's something we should do more because they need it more.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think it is that keeps men from searching those sort of things out or resonating with that sort of environment, right? I mean, on the flip side of that, right, there's women's groups where this is the norm, right? That everybody's showing up and doing it. Like, how do men get in this space of one not, and part of what we talked about before the show is that there is a real need for community, and it's not just necessarily about. I think it's great when they end up in a place where they are vulnerable and they're challenged by other men, but I think that overall the men don't have the same number of friendships now that they have in the past, and so what do you think it is that kind of finds men in this place of low number of, if especially a low number of like deep, intimate connections? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, what I know, and it's from my personal experience a lot, and from what I know as a man, is we have no clue about sharing. We want always to save face, to appear strong, to appear stoic, like we have all the answers. And it's funny, because if you go to find, for example, an alpha male in movies, if you end up in a James Bond movie, you have this guy who's always in control, zero emotions, he knows everything. And this is what we are trying and envision to be, some sort of such a character. But those are not real characters, those are not real men at all. So we have no idea of what a man looks like. We tend to we tend to go into communities, and they can be business communities, they can be sports clubs. You can go out with friends for in a pub for a beer, but you don't have those vulnerable discussions, because you have learned that you shouldn't have them. What happens at your house stays at your house. You need to appear strong even to your friends. It's funny, this is my work, and sometimes a friend might call me and mention an issue they're having, and I feel the rush to change the subject, because I still don't feel comfortable when someone is opening up. And it's the same for me and same for other men, that we're not feeling comfortable about opening up ourselves or hearing other people. And we really needed, in the men's group, to create the ground rules and the space, the emotionally safe space for people to feel that okay, it's okay to do that. This is my best answer, that we're not primed for that, we are not taught how to do that, and it won't happen on its own, having those deep conversations.
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned that, I'm thinking watching with my kids Marvel movies, right? Like these action figures. You got Captain America and Iron Man and all of these sort of things. And like Iron Man's he's not necessarily breaking down and like sharing his feelings and sharing with the other Avengers that like, hey man, I really struggled with this today. That's that through social media and movies that men are painted and projected as this character that is never has a bad day, that never needs anything. And interestingly, one of the topics that we talked about recently in my men's group is, and it's something that's come up a lot, is leadership and what leadership looks like. And really what we dug into in that time was that leadership isn't always about one, having all the answers, right? Mm-hmm. Doing everything right. That if anything, that's probably that sort of mentality probably inhibits growth, right? And that sense of progress and leadership and things like that it's not until you actually maybe step back and allow others the opportunity, that you're sharing with them and you're connecting with them and you allow others to kind of take the lead, that real wholesome sort of leadership really kind of happens. So what do you feel like from your perspective, what sort of changes are possible when a man does kind of start this journey and start opening up to exploring it? And this isn't obviously, I've done it and you've done it and we've been in groups for a while. So I know that it's not a softening of going to that side of things, right? That there's a real sort of like, I don't know. I picture it as like a glowing, right? A radiance of like kind of coming to life and coming to yourself, maybe for the first time in your life, but From your experience, what do you feel like is possible when men start to explore this?
We have this big part of our brain that is totally untapped and we don't use it, and it's our emotional brain. And as men, we're not very good in emotionally regulating ourselves. So this is a part for growth, and this is something we can really you can make your brain smarter, you can be smarter. This is the answer, that people who start tapping into their feelings and becoming vulnerable learn how to take smarter decisions, faster decisions, because they train their brain to and use it as a whole, both their logical brains and their emotional brain, to get to faster, better decisions that are better aligned with what they really want. And this is an example I'm always giving, and it's not a funny one, but it's about lobotomized people, in the 1900s, when they would uh, do this operation to separate the logical brain from the emotional brain, and people
Oh, and
couldn't
you're
make
talking about like
any
when they get a lobotomy, like they actually go in
lobotomy.
and take a piece
Lobotomy.
out. Yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And when you had your frontal lobes, separated from the emotional parts of your brain, you couldn't take any decisions at all. I mean, like what to eat, or if you want to sleep, or lie down, or get up. And we're very close. We're very close to that, because we do take decisions, but only logical decisions. But there are some things that you can't decide logically, like where do you want to stay, or who to marry, or how many children you should have. These are the things that men coming to the groups are struggling with. They know how to take logical decisions, but those decisions don't have any meaning behind them. They don't mean anything to them, so they don't have the scale to tell them what they should do. And you either go into the FOMO approach, like I have to do everything, or you become very cynic and say, okay, I won't do nothing. This is my life. I'll be like this. I'll be bitter until I'm 70. So this is the change that I see that is happening. People are becoming smarter. They are taking decisions that they support with their hearts better. They are more sure of themselves. This is how self-esteem and self-confidence is built, from doing things you believe in them. And you can do 100 great things and people will clap you because you are such a great leader. But if you don't believe in your decisions, and all the validation you are getting is external, then you'll never have the confidence, you'll never have the self-esteem to put behind this, and you will never relax. Actually, you can never let your guard down
Yeah.
like this.
One of the things that reminds me of, so I have part of my program is a man's guide to self-leadership. And in that, we talk a lot about this model, this be, do, have model. I don't know if it's something that you're familiar with, but how a lot of times, especially as men, that we go about it kind of the wrong way. And it can show up in different ways. One, that like, hey, if I have these things, or if I buy these things, then I'll be able to do these sort of things. And as a result of that, I'll become this sort of person. Right. Or there's also, if I just go out and I work really hard, I work my face off. And as a result of that, I'll get to buy all of these sort of things. And then I'll get to be that person. Then in the end, I'll get to be that person. But the reality is really starting from who is it? Who do I want to be? Like, what matters to me? What are my values? What's the core? And then from that, deciding what needs to be done in order to be that person. And as a result of that, as a byproduct of that, you have the life that you want to live. But it all goes back. And this was the same way for me, that I don't know in the beginning when I started on my journey that I had ever really asked myself, well, one, I had never considered what my core values were, right? But I'd never stopped and taken the time to ask myself, like, how do I feel about this? Is why is this important to me? Right? Or what is important to me? And I think those are times where you as a man have to like stop and ask yourself, like, how do I feel about this? And when we don't have the skills to be able to feel, then we pick up, I think from a lot of times we pick up what it is that we're supposed to, who we're supposed to be from everybody else. Right. Well, the way to be successful is to work your face off, never spend any time with your family, and have a lot of money. Like,
Mhm.
you know, so yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I was reading today a story, and it's a story for children, and it says that there was this king, this very wealthy king, and once he had to go out to the street to meet the villagers, um, the road was just dirt. So he was walking with no shoes because at that time there were no shoes. He was walking on the dirt, and his feet were hurt and swollen, and he was very angry with that he had to do this to his body. So he called every person who was working with leather in his village, and he asked them to cover all the streets with leather. So when he walked, he wouldn't have to hurt his feet.
Yeah.
And someone told him, okay, this will be a very hard project. Maybe it will be easier to create something to cover your feet. And this is, how they created shoes. And this is the same story. The king was trying to change all the external factors to solve the problem, and he will have to do this huge effort that will cost a lot and will take a lot of resources. But the solution was within. He could just protect his feet. And it's like this, exactly like your story. You can have all the check marks, you can have all the successes, you can buy all the things, get all the money, and it will improve your life to some extent, for certain. But as long as you don't work with yourself and fix the things that bother you on the side, you will never be fulfilled. And this has no bottom, actually. There is not a peak high enough that will make you happy if you don't feel happy in the first place.
Yeah. That's so true. So true. I love that part of the story. I couldn't help but laugh as you were telling it. He's like, he went back to the leather maker and was like, "Hey, line the streets with leather." It's like, oh
Yeah.
man, that's so funny. Like, hey, let's just put this blanket, let's cover the world with leather, and I'll never have to worry about it again. Instead of like going back and looking at how you personally could address this for yourself, right? What is this? What can I do? What kind of action that I take, right? And maybe you can tell other men after that, hey man, I put these leather things on the bottom of my feet and my entire life changed. Okay, cool. But you had to do the work for yourself in the beginning. So I love that story. So I know that you have, with the men that you work with and the men in your group, that you have some sort of like a first aid kit for men that are starting to do the work, that are doing the work, uh, as a way to handle stress and situations and feelings and things like that. What's in that toolkit?
Hmm. I've been meeting a lot of people, and I was feeling the same, and I still do feel the same at some points, but less and less. That okay, sometimes I'm too stressed, or sometimes I want to quit everything and stop being. And we can pivot in our lives, but quitting life is not an option, actually. So we have to keep going through. And I started writing an article with things that I did and helped me personally, and I ended up creating a small guide with 5 habits someone can incorporate and have immediate relief in how they are feeling. these feelings of stress, of want to quit, there are some habits of our mind, there are some inclinations we have, and it's good to recognize this, because this is our patterns, this is how I'm clogged or how someone else is clogged. So the habits that I describe, they are there to work in 180%, 180 degrees, the opposite direction, and make your mind incline for the best. I have them as a guide, but as a quick reference, there are some things you can do daily, like take a news detox, stop learning bad things, or connect with people, but real connections, or practice a bit of mindfulness. 10 minutes per day can work wonders. And this is, there is an example I'm giving always about habits, because it's a hard idea to grasp, and it's not enough, listening to a podcast, finding a guru, reading a book. It's not enough having the information about something. I mean, I know that washing my teeth every night will uh, help my gums be healthy, but if I just read it and I don't do it daily, then it won't work. And it's the same with our minds. We do have a lot of negative patterns, a lot of bad habits. We think negatively a lot. This is how we are built. So we need some kind of way of mental hygiene, and we need to do it daily. And those are the habits we need to build. And it's not enough just knowing that, okay, I shouldn't have bad thoughts, but you should really, for example, practice gratitude and do it daily, and do it intentionally.
Yeah. I totally totally resonate with all of that. I One of the things that comes up for me along the way, and it's almost like that there's this earned sense of confidence, right? That it's not, to your point, you can't just think your way into healthy teeth, right? That you actually have to do the work. And it's not until you do the work that there's, I feel like there's, and it goes back to this be, do, have. I feel like there's this mindset that like, hey, I need to do these things so that I can become confident, so that I can go out. And once I'm confident, then I'll go out and do these things. Right. But the reality is that in most cases, in whatever it doesn't have to just be confidence or brushing your teeth or whatever it is, but like you have to actually brush your teeth first. That's like the key ingredient, and I've found for myself that a lot of times it's navigating all of the stories, whether it's the internal or the external or how it is that I'm going to deal with it ahead of time. But still in the end, just going out and taking that action, right? So if it's approaching somebody in public and introducing myself, spending some time and having navigated like what it is that I'm afraid of, right? All of the other possibilities. But at the end of that, I still just have like the real fruit comes from just going out and doing it. So how do you as a part of that kit? What do you suggest how do you suggest that men approach those sort of things? Because it's easy enough to just say like, oh, okay, like I'll add more gratitude in my life, as you kind of mentioned. But how do you suggest that men go about implementing these sort of things into their life?
You need to approach this as a habit or as a ritual, as something you do every day. I mean, you take a shower every day, and you eat every day. And if you have just one lunch, it won't last you for a week. So you need to be there, and it needs consistency. I can read 100 books about working out, but in no chance I will go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow and I'll be shredded like Schwarzenegger, for example. I need to do the work. I need to eat healthy, or eat actually what I need to grow. I need to go to the gym 5 times per week. And it's the same thing for every habit we are trying to build, and especially for those habits that involve the brain, because we know that we need to build those new pathways, those new neurons, and it takes time. So this is how I tell to people to approach it as a ritual and do it every day, and after some time it becomes easier and easier, and you start to see the results. And the results won't come to in day one, they might come in day 7, but if you keep practicing for longer and longer, this is where your life is changing. This is a big part of the Western philosophy. We trust a lot our logical brains and the information that we are having. If you go to the Western philosophies, people would repeat the same exercise forever and ever and ever, and this is the Tao. You do the same thing day after day after day, and this is the road to mastery. So this is true. We need time to learn, and repetition is the road to mastery, even in the simpler tasks or even in the simpler habits.
Yeah. From what you're saying, I hear like a lot of consistency in there of like, hey, that this day in and day out, that doing the same thing with repetition. For myself, long ago, from one of my mentors, I picked up like essentially like a habit tracker where it was, for me, it was in Excel, right? I do so much in Excel, and I would have my goals across the top and maybe the dates down the side. And I would go to the extent where I would actually every day, marking a yes or a no, that I spent 15 minutes salsa dancing, or I got in the cold plunge, right? Or I did these sort of things to where I could look over the course of a week and over a month what my consistency percentages were, right? And I could see that over the course of the month, like, that either I had a really high or a really low consistency, and then it gave me an opportunity to look at and evaluate and to look at why was it I wasn't meeting my goals, right? What is important to me, what's not important to me, but tracking, being that level of intentional and tracking where it is that I want to go or what's important.
Yeah, tracking and getting stats is a big part in business, and I understand a lot of the men that you're working with are leaders, they are managers. So in their work, they do track progress, they do have their key performance indices, they
Mm,
do measure stuff. And if this works in a business environment, then it will work in a personal environment as well. And I do something similar. I do have some KPIs in my clients and help them define them for themselves and then track them. Because it's easy, to fall back into the habit of just thinking, overthinking, and procrastinating. And our minds can't tell the difference between thinking about something or actually doing the work. But if I think all day about that salsa class I should do and I never go because I'm stressed, in the end of the night, I'll still be exhausted and have zero experience
mm,
because my mind was thinking about it. So my mind is exhausted, but I do have the zero experience. And we have to track it sometimes. And people totally underestimate this. And once you have them, if they are on a diet, if you have them track how many times they eat sweets in their week, they would be amazed because they might be doing, for example, every day. In small doses, they forget, but they do it every day. And it's important to track what we do in these things we want to improve at least.
yeah, absolutely. And as you're saying that, I feel like I find myself back in this logical place, right? Like you say, of KPIs, it's really easy to get right back into that, but it is that ebb and flow between that. And I think especially as men that I find, at least for myself, that I do enjoy looking at things at times from that perspective of being able to make it very logical and break it down, right? That how am I doing this? But it takes both that logical side and the emotional side to go back, I think, and question yourself like, okay, well, I can understand logistically why it is that now I can see that I am or I am not doing this. Why am I not doing it? Right. And digging into the emotions around that is interesting. I'd like to, as we continue on, kind of get back to a little bit of the men's group and you working with men, and what from your experience has been some of the changes that have happened for the men that have shown up for you and done the work, either with you or in the men's group. Like, what sort of realizations have they realized in their life?
What I see is that men start building different kind of relationships with other people, not only with the men in their group, but they start questioning all of their relationships. They start having deeper conversations with people they already had the existing relationships with. So this is what is more interesting for me, that they change how they approach work, the world in general. Uh, there are smaller life changes happening, like someone getting a raise, a promotion, or starting something of its own, which are the good side results of the group. Because people, once they get some, once they are released from the stress they live, they become a bit more creative, they see more opportunities, and they go after those opportunities. So somehow they end up improving as well their external factors in their lives, because they are more ready for that. But the biggest part is how they approach relationships, and how they approach friends, and how they get some, there are things that we don't know. No one taught us in school how to make a relationship. It just happened, to sit with that guy, and you are still friends 20 years down the road. But learning how to make friends from scratch is a life skill. Learning how to manage tough times for yourself, so you won't indulge into rage or self-doubt, is a new skill. And by being able to emotionally regulate yourself better, and this is something men are taking from the groups, then you are ready to take more educated decisions in your life. It doesn't matter if you are, in the if you're driving your car and someone cuts you, and you learn how to process the trades, or if it is your boss and you are afraid of him and you freeze every time, and you're still be able there to process that feeling and come back with a better answer for yourself, a better way to handle the situation, whatever that is. So if I sum up, the two things I see are that people are learning to connect better with other friends, men or women or their parents or whoever, and they also learn how to process their emotions in a way that is helpful for them and supports their goals, instead of not helping them.
Yeah, totally. I totally resonate with that. That so much of this work, it's not just about showing up and sharing your feelings or learning how to. It's those sort of they're like life skills that you shared an example in like rage, but as another example, just having boundaries, right? That could be setting boundaries with your kid. It could be setting boundaries with your partner. It could be setting boundaries with people at work, right? That there's so many of these skills that learning them, and to your point, that these aren't so much of it, I feel like, we go through school and you learn how to, reading, writing, arithmetic sort of thing, but you don't learn how to actually navigate life necessarily. That it's expected that you picked up on it magically along the way, but there's not a whole lot of emphasis that goes into learning and developing these sort of skills. And so that people are kind of out there to fend for themselves and don't realize that it carries over to so many different things in their life, that it's so important. So, yeah. Well, hey, what would you say as we kind of start to wrap up here, Stefanos? What would you say to the man that's on the outside right now, that's, I guess, kind of like lost in their life and looking for hope and don't know where to look, and maybe they're looking for the first time at getting support through either a men's group or coaching or something like that? What advice would you give to that man?
I will give the advice to experiment a bit, give it a couple of tries, in come up with some solutions that may be there for him. It can be a group, it can be therapy, it can be trying a new experience. But I will say just go and try it and trust your gut. And if you think that it's working, then it is really working. I'm speaking with a lot of men who say, okay, that therapy, oh, that's good for other people. Coaching is good, but for other people. Well, if you think that something is good for other people, then most probably it's good for you as well. So give it a try. It's no shame in trying.
Definitely. Well, hey, Stefanos, I've loved talking with you today. This has been great. It's been great to get to know you. How can the men that are listening here get a hold of you or get in touch with you or follow your work a little bit more to find out about who you are and what you do?
The best way is through my website. They can find also this guide, the first aid kit I created there. People can find me also in Meetup, but I'll give you the links where people can find my events and everything. And I think this is the best way to follow with me. And if anyone feels like he wants to experiment, you can join, your group, my group, and have an experience and a voice of his own, actually.
Yeah, I love that. Well, again, Stefanos, thanks for coming on the show. And of course, we'll have any of the information in the show notes of how to get a hold of Stefanos. And it was a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
It was a pleasure. Nice speaking to you, Corey.
Hey, before you go, this podcast is just the surface. The real work happens inside the Evolved Men Brotherhood. This is our private community of men committed to leading themselves boldly, building confidence, and sharpening one another in the fire. Registration officially opens December 1st, and we kick off our brotherhood calls together beginning in January 2026. But you can get on the list today and be the first to claim your spot. If you're tired of going at life alone and you're ready for true accountability, support, and connection with men who get it, head to evolvedmenproject.com/brotherhood. Don't just listen, step into the brotherhood. I'll see you inside.